Moving on to the shelf. I had cut some MDF to make the shelf and wanted it to be covered with some veneer. So I used 3mm tape and covered the edges and the inside of the veneer. Covering the edges is very important so that the veneer does not tear out later. Then I trim the edges on the table saw. The studs with which I am going to attach the shelf came with these open ends. I mark the place and then drill holes to attach it with nut and bolt. Then I screw these steel studs on the end cap. Now I keep the shelf on the stud and mark where to drill the hole. Then using the Forstner bit, I drill a bit larger hole. This gives me a little bit of play to adjust the shelf if required. Using the given screw heads, I tighten the shelf. The other side of the shelf is attached to the legs with L brackets. Now to make the tabletop. The base of the table is made of MDF. I cut some pine strips from which I am going to mill even thickness of pine strips. And it's going to be a lot of them. The important point to remember is that all pine strips need to be of the same thickness. I stick these strips to MDF using wood glue and brad nails. I followed the brick pattern that masons use. This gave me a nice order to follow. I made sure to leave no gaps between each strips. This would give a clean look when done. Still, because the pine was bent, it did have some gaps which I was able to hide with glue and sawdust. This sawdust I was able to collect when I sanded the legs earlier. While that dried, I grind down the nails that had shot on the other side of the MDF. I didn't have a shorter nail with me, so I just used what I had and grounded it later. It was so much fun to do the grinding. All the strips that I stuck earlier were hanging out unevenly, so using a straight edge, I cut out on all the corners. Now to trim the edges of this tabletop, I used some colored red wood. This wood was very dense, so I had a difficult time cutting it. Then I rounded off just one side of the redwood. Using the 45-degree sled, I cut the pieces to length and attached it to the table using glue and brad nails. For the back side, I cut it into two pieces to leave a small slot in between for the wires to pass, just in case if I want to use a desk lamp. I covered the edges of MDF with smaller strips of red colored wood. I glued them in place and held it with some painter's tape until it dried. I painted the underside of the table with white paint. Then I invert the rest of the frame on the top. I attach the frame by drilling some pilot holes, countersink them and then attaching it with screws. I did the same on the other longer sides of the frame. For the sides with the drawer, I could not use the same method, So I used L brackets to attach the frame to the tabletop. Before finishing the wood, I gave the entire table a good sanding with 220 grit. I curved the edges too while sanding. Then used Asian Paints Touchwood to finish the table. Before the second coat, I sanded again with 320 grit. Finishing the wood is the best part of the entire work. I gave the same treatment for the legs too, but this was so much better to show on camera. With that, the table is ready. I wanted the table to look simple but entirely made with hardwood. Oh, by the way, my friend was very happy to see his new table. If you enjoyed this video, please click on the like button below, and if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Follow me on Instagram to see what I'm working on right now, and like me on Facebook to see some behind the scene videos. Here are some videos that might interest you. Until next time, happy learning!